Hi there.
Hi, welcome back to Curious Collection. I'm Will.
I'm Cinnamon.
So there's a topic that we've been talking about for a couple of weeks now, and it just drives me crazy. It gives me tons of frustration in that finding the right title composition for a product on eBay specifically. And I was looking at my feed this morning, and there was a post on the community page from Josh Galt, and he talked about an item that he had sold. He had trouble, listing it, selling it. He had tried auctions. He had tried selling it as a buy it now. He ended up selling it as a best offer, I think. And the person who purchased it from him changed a couple of words in the title, sold it very quickly for like 20 times what they paid. So it looks like he sold it for about $64. They sold it for $1,200. And so that's obviously one of my biggest concerns is, am I doing this right? We've been, I've been a full-time reseller for 4.5 years, and there's still challenges.
There absolutely are.
Even working in a narrow niche.
You can't know everything about everything.
Right. So, there's things that are going to slip through. For us, sometimes we're like, hey, it sold, I'm happy. I just have to be happy. Take it as a lesson learned. But I want to talk about what it is that eBay recommends and whether or not that's the right thing, or, what it is that we do when we're creating listings.
And that changes over time as well. We've evolved in a lot of different ways, and I feel like that's part of what we bring to the table is our ability to identify and figure out what that thing is, and then also to figure out how to describe it in a way that our buyer can find it.
Right, absolutely. Or describe it in a way that maybe your buyer didn't know that they wanted it, so that they do find it, and then they can purchase it. So what does eBay say? eBay says, that they use a best match system to match your item. And so, in my opinion, this really works well on new in-package, barcoded items, mass-produced, not the types of items that we sell. So if you don't have the item number, if you don't have the manufacturer date, if you don't have the brand, the stuff that they're going to suggest here isn't necessarily going to work for you. So let's see what they say. They say that the formula eBay uses to sort listings consider a number of different factors, including how closely the listing matches the buyer's search terms, how popular the item is, the price of the item, the quality of listing, how complete the listing is, the listing terms, insert and service, and your track record as a seller. So, they're not even focusing on
the title.
The title really is. There's so much other stuff that's going to determine if your item's actually going to get shown or not.
Yeah.
Even if you're hitting all of the points in the title, still doesn't mean that you're going to get top placement in that search return. So that's on the eBay help page. If you type in, title, it'll help you with that. You can read that whole thing. So then I popped over to the eBay community board, and they have an entire section on listing titles and optimization. And again, I'm not a computer programmer. I don't intend to be a computer programmer, and I am not an eBay guru. I don't know everything there is to know about my category. We pick up tips and tricks as we go on and see what works for us. So on the community page for eBay, they suggest using the title in the format of, so they want brand, product name, model number, variations as in size and then color, and additional keywords. So if you're listing a pair of tennis shoes, you can very easily list the brand. You can list the model number.
Nike Jordans, 1998, white, whatever.
Right. You can list it very closely to
size
the
8
exact specifications that the person's looking for. They also say that titles with more than 60 characters have 1.5 times the chance of selling. So definitely want to use up the full 80 characters that they give you.
Absolutely.
Effective titles should be clear and concise and informative. Okay, so one of the things that since we're touching on informative, if I'm selling something and it has clear damage, it is not pristine, I will put that in the title.
Absolutely.
So people are not going to click through necessarily, especially if they're shopping on their phone. You have to click through to get to the description.
Right.
You have to go to a tiny little box within the description page to actually see the condition. We want to make that very clear because, again, you want to convey as much information as possible in that title.
Right. And you want your customers to be happy. I understand that as a seller, sometimes we get very frustrated because, like, well, why didn't they just read the description? It says right in there. The last picture is a picture of the damage. But if they're not clicking all the way through, and again,
or looking at every picture,
yeah,
a lot of times I'm guilty of it myself. I'll see the keywords. I almost bought the wrong size tennis shoes the other day because I didn't think to put in the size. That's very clear. That's a very obvious thing that everyone knows. You have to have the right size, and I forgot to put that into my search.
I've bought the wrong tennis shoes. I've bought men's size instead of women's size because so it happens, and so we want to make it as easy for the customer as possible.
Right. So we want to describe the item in the title in a clear and concise manner, even if the information is the same as the product's category name. So men's shirts would be the category, and you're listing a men's shirt.
You're going to want that in the title too.
Right.
I always put earrings in the title, even though it's in the earring category.
It says avoid writing entire words in capital letters. That's just bad etiquette. People feel like you're yelling at them.
Yeah.
Avoid using asterisks or other markers between words. And this is something that I didn't know early on because, you'd put a comma or you'd put a dash. Those are not search terms. So don't use them. Just put a space and put your next word.
Right. You don't need to waste characters because you want to use those characters for your description.
Right. If you're listing the item with variations, so they're saying a dress with different colors or sizing, you don't need to put that all in the title. That's going to be searchable from the description, from the item specifics. So you don't need to include all that. So that's kind of what eBay's putting out there as how you're supposed to do it. But for people like us, Josh, millions of other people out there, that doesn't actually work.
No, because I'm not necessarily selling something that is a shoe that's already named. And, so what do you do when you're not 100% certain?
Right. So Josh had that stereo view card. And so I actually grabbed a couple out of our own collection here that we've got for sale. And I want to show you guys what a stereo view card is. So they would have used this like a ViewMaster. So this is like a primitive ViewMaster. It'd give you a 3D image. You could see that. And then on the back, a lot of times they'll give you the name of the location, or they'll give you the photographer, or sometimes they'll just, give you the photographer in the city. So, this one here is a Victorian woman. So on Josh's card, he didn't put the photographer's name. That's where the value lies. Again, is the value in the image or is it in the photographer?
And it depends.
Is it in the location? So on these cards here, this one here is actually someone else has it listed on eBay for $20. And so how would I go about listing this in a way that somebody's going to find it? So what I would do is the publisher of this is in Littleton, New Hampshire. So if it was a landmark of Littleton, New Hampshire, I would put Littleton, New Hampshire. And then I would put a description of what it is that the card's about. So
you would be so surprised how many times the things that he sell it's directly related to the area that it's from.
Right, to the location. Right. So, and then I would go ahead. So, Littleton, New Hampshire, Victorian woman skating. She's sitting on what looks to be an ice floe, so I would put ice floe. I might also put ice or skating, ice skating as one word. So there's a lot of different ways that you can put that so that the algorithm's going to pick it up. It also says that it was made by Kilburn Brothers. So that might be an important thing that I would also include. But what would make this incredibly valuable is if I knew who the woman was, right? So I've now added a personal connection. That family might want this. This might be somebody's great-great-grandmother. So that would be something that would help narrow that down. So that's something that I wanted to just share with you guys. It's very hard on stuff like this because if you're not copying, so the other one here is Loch Catherine, and it has a publisher name on it. But and some of these go for $50-$60 on locations like that. There's trains. Some of those trains can go for over $100.
Yeah.
And
or the ships.
The train station specifically, not just the train station, but you have to be able to narrow it down to the location. And again, sometimes it's the photographer. So if you don't recognize the image, who the photographer is. And that's what makes this an incredibly challenging part of reselling.
It really does. And all of those things are going to be niche specific. So just like with my jewelry, if you know the person who made it. So like, as an example, my Crown Trafaris, all marked Crown Trafari. But if it's an Alfred Philippe, which is not signed specifically Alfred Philippe, it's just the designer who did that particular piece. And they're not named specifically. So you just have to know that they're Alfred Philippe.
Right. And so that does require a vast amount of knowledge in that specific item. And so that's where we actually will see a lot of times we've seen those Crown Tafari pieces. The one that you had was an apple. It sold for over $100 for it. We're not talking about
for a brooch.
We're not talking about gold. We're not talking about sterling. This is costume jewelry selling for over $100 because you know who the designer is.
Right.
Other pieces that you've seen though going for under
15.
10.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. If it was the same piece that wasn't the Alfred Philippe, which they did make also, it's just that the Alfred Philippe had a couple of rhinestones in it. So the difference was, and again, you don't know that unless you are way deep into that niche. The Juliana pieces are not signed. There's, some Bo Sterling that are not signed. There's so many of these costume jewelry pieces that aren't signed. And if you don't know, then you're leaving it all on the table.
Right. And so we really do. That's what we talk about. We want to niche down. We want to know everything there is. There's a lot of money to be made with knowledge. And when you don't have the knowledge, you're leaving money on the table, or you're just generally not selling an item. So I brought a couple more pieces. One is very simple, in my opinion, to list. And then, so we want to make sure that the item is presented in a way that will get the attention. So first one up here, we've got Muhammad Ali on the cover of a Sports Illustrated 1971. And it's in fair condition. It's not great. It does have the label that brings the value down on that. It does have a little bit of curling, as you can tell. But I would want to list this, and I'm gonna for the Sports Illustrated collector, the person that wants to have every single one of them, I'm gonna start with Sports Illustrated, and I'm gonna put the date, and I'm gonna put Muhammad Ali, right? So that I've got everything that's pertinent to this. Sometimes it's the article.
Right.
So
right.
Sometimes
we've seen that with those treasure hunter magazines. There was one particular that was regarding a story of a famous shipwreck, and that was the reason why that one issue had value.
Right. So there's, even within something like that seems like it's very obvious. He's on the cover. We're going to put that in. But if there was an article in here about him that was maybe pertinent to his career, we might want to put that in the title and give us the edge over everybody else. There's probably, I haven't looked at it today, but there's probably 200 of that issue listed on eBay. How do you get it in front of everyone? How do you get people to see it? So the next one I've got, this is going to be the last piece that I share. I've had this one for a couple of years now. It's a very unique piece. I've never been able to find anything like it. I've Google searched the heck out of it. I've Google image searched it. I really just can't find anything. And part of it is because it's an international piece. So I'm going to show you what I've got here. This is bound with thread. All of these, you can see there's Japanese writing on the cover. There's the theater mask. I hope I'm holding it correctly. As I open it up, there is images, Japanese writing. And this right here, this image is actually Lottery Bride 1930, but it's published for the Japanese audience. And the entire book is pieces like this. So all in Japanese writing, all cinema pieces. It's very interesting, as you can see, but how, without having all of the depth of knowledge of this piece, how do you possibly get that into the right hands? I've identified the movie that's in it from 1930, so I know that the collection's from approximately that range. This is probably something that somebody was touring, doing like a world tour, or possibly military activity, and brought back with them. I have no idea how to list this. It's been listed for close to 2 years, maybe 3. I've got a significant amount of money into this because I thought it was amazing.
Yeah.
I had considered tearing it apart and selling it by the page because I can identify some of the pieces. But that breaks my heart as a person who's looking at it through a historical value.
Right. Not wanting to destroy the intrinsic value of, exactly, the collection as a whole.
Right. So, there's a lot of people out there that will tell you, well, it's simple. It's simple. All you have to do is this simple thing. It's not as simple as it sounds. You really have to know about the stuff, and you really have to know what that customer's looking for. And that's really what it comes down to, is what are the keywords that customer's going to type in to find something that you're selling that isn't, Nike Jordans or,
yeah, sometimes it's just so hard. And you can make yourself crazy, because there's times when I will just dive so deep into this rabbit hole and I'm not any further off at the end than I was. And that's
where you'll see me looking over, frustrated, going, just list it. It doesn't even matter, because we have to move on with our lives. We can't spend an hour trying to list a single piece. We're better off, honestly, at the end of the day, are you better off to have this piece that I have spent hours looking up that I still haven't managed to sell? Or are we better off to take 10 minutes to list the item in the best way that we can figure out?
And the thing is that sometimes you don't know, because, like, for an example, I had those bench beads that I had gotten. I didn't know anything about Native American jewelry. I bought this necklace for $25, which was a lot for me to spend on something that I didn't know anything about. She told me it was coin silver. I didn't know what that even meant. Obviously I could figure out that it means that they melted down some silver coins and made jewelry out of it. But I ended up doing a bunch of research, figured out that they're called Navajo pearls, that they're called bench beads. I was able to then take some of that knowledge, put it into the title, and I immediately sold the piece for $450. And I gained so much knowledge about Native American jewelry that I was then able to take that and kind of use it as a springboard to go into more depth of that category. And since then, I've done very well in that category of Native American jewelry. So you know, sometimes it's a really wonderful thing to be able to gain more knowledge and to be, you know, because that's really what your customer is kind of paying for. Is we are going, okay, well, our role is to go and find undervalued things, identify them in a way that our customer can now find that amazing piece that they didn't even know that they had to have.
Yeah. Yeah. And a lot of times we're finding it because the person who has it doesn't know what it is.
Right. Right. So it's so much more than just taking the piece. It's taking the piece and adding all of that knowledge that we've acquired,
Absolutely.
you know, over the years.
Yeah, absolutely. So, I don't know that we've actually helped anyone with sharing this, but it's a frustration that we've had is that, and I don't know that it ever gets perfect.
Yeah. Because sometimes you do. You're like, okay, well, I see a Maker's Mark and I don't know who the Maker's Mark is. And if I would have known who the Maker's Mark was, then maybe I could have gotten 10 times the amount of value. Sometimes you have to be able to just let it go and just say it's a designer piece.
Yeah. And sometimes we just do the best we can. And honestly, when I pick something up and I sell it for a profit, I just have to let it go.
Mm-hmm.
And that can hurt if you know that people are making money on you.
Yes.
But at the same time, we know that we made our money and we move on because now we have that money we can reinvest. We can grow our business.
Right.
Right. The cinema book that I've got here, this theatrical review, one view in the last forever.
Yeah.
So nobody's finding it. Nobody knows how to look it up. I don't know how to present it in a way that they can find it. And that's going to happen too.
Mm-hmm.
And so maybe it's time to reach out to an auction house or to an expert and get more help if the item warrants it.
Absolutely. And then the other option is to just cut your losses and
right.
Or just leave it sitting on the shelf.
Right. Yeah. And that's where it's going to sit. It's just going to stay on my shelf.
Yeah.
I think it's cool. I'm going to keep it.
Mm-hmm.
So we'll see. Maybe someday it'll sell.
Yeah.
So thanks for stopping in. I would like if anyone has anything to share about tips and tricks that you use to list your items in good, title structure. I know that some people have suggested utilizing AI. I don't know anything about that. So without, some type of direction, I don't even know where to start looking on how you would do that. So if you've got tips and tricks, drop them in the message.
Right.
Let us know.
Share with
everybody else. And then, of course, like and subscribe.
All right. Thanks so much. Good luck to you guys out there.